I'm now going to hand over to our moderator for the two panels, Kieno Kammies. Kieno is a renowned talk show host, entrepreneur, and chief strategy officer of Double I. You will be joined by the rest of the panel, Marais, who is the head of Africa and Brazil supply chain for Cotton On, Peter Allerstorfer, who's the CEO for UCOOK, as well as Christo, Semmelink, the integration manager of Vectra. Kieno, over to you.
Thank you very much for that, Sharon. And let's have a look at my ugly face very quickly. There we go. Let's get that right. Wonderful. It's great to be part of this particular panel. Just a little bit about myself. I used to be on radio up until about a month ago, handed in my resignation, and I've decided to just get into business full time. I am Chief Strategy Officer at a London and Cape Town based dev firm, and it's called Double I. We just build people's innovations, their ideas. And I also have my own innovations business called KKI, where we use design thinking. I work along with Dr. Marais from the Center for Futures Research at Stellenbosch University. And we help businesses innovate, whether it's within supply chains or generally using design thinking. So, of course, what this Fulfillment Summit is about fulfillment, the fulfillment of needs, the customer journey, the experience, with your brand during the fulfillment process is what we're going to be talking about, and also managing and measuring your customers' fulfillment experience. And I'd just like each one of our panels. So Marais, if we can start with you. A very good morning. Great to have you on, head of Africa and the Brazil supply chain for Cotton On. And if I may, Philip, just do this very quickly. These I happened to buy at Cotton On at the waterfront yesterday. So loving your clothing. Even a Madala like me fits into it very nicely. So great to have you on. Great to have as part of the panel. And let's just talk a little bit about Cotton On, its history, and your core customer base. Because before we talk about fulfillment, I think it's important for us to know the profile of person that you have to fulfill to. So maybe we can start there.
Yeah, well, we've morning, and thank you for the introduction. We've been in South Africa now for 10 years. We're part of a bigger group that's been around for 20 or 30 years, based out of Australia. And bringing those designs and that apparel, that sort of lifestyle brands to the South African customer has been really good for us here in South Africa. So before I joined Cotton On, it was a bit of a mover and shaker in the industry. It was something a bit different. One of our mottos is, to do something so the normal with a bit of a twist. So those of us with kids will know that the Cotton On kids stuff is always a little bit different. There's just something about it. Whether they be your joggers now with a pocket extra or a nice material that makes you feel better in it, especially during lockdown, right? Has been a really good journey for us in South Africa, and we continue to grow and look to satisfy our customer who, and you hate to box people because we've got 6 brands in South Africa. So we've got a stationery brand, we've got a younger lifestyle brand, we've got a women's activewear and intimates brand, obviously the kids brand, accessories brand. So all of these things try and get you to not go somewhere else after you've been to our store. And we like to, actually quite an interesting measurement that we've come across quite recently through one of the banks is, did you go to another apparel store after ours? And we like to see that, for instance, decreased over a period of time. That just means that our product is ticking enough boxes for that consumer who is going to the mall less, but they are buying more when they go there. So when they go there, we don't want them to go somewhere else afterwards.
Absolutely. I love it. So you're ADHD like me then, are you? Concentrating on a couple of things at the same time, but still, I would imagine, hyper-focused within those particular segments.
All customer, right? So if my customer's happy, then I'm happy. We've got to do 100 things before our customer's happy, and we won't rest until we've got those 100 things right. And those 100 things might be a little bit different today and tomorrow, but it will be relentless in satisfying that customer's demand.
All right, great. So what I'm going to do is, sorry, you were saying, just finish the sentence?
No, and experience, so not just their demand, but how they feel in doing it. Yeah.
Exactly. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to introduce each and every one of our panelists and talk a little bit about your business, and then I'll get into the meat of things. We'll start talking about, and I think my first question really, if you can prepare yourselves, will be how in the world do you actually stay on top of the needs of your customer? So, you know, that sort of empathetic research versus, you know, the generic type of research that we use, which sometimes tend to be qualitative. But anyway, I want to move on to, so Philip, thank you very much for that. So Peter Allerstorfer at least is with UCOOK, a brand I know well. They've delivered one or two things to my place. I've got to tell you, amazing stuff. So Peter, great having you on. It's good to
thanks for
it's good to see
me.
all of us having boards and hard at work behind us as well.
Yes, I like it.
Isn't it better than the library and the books that everybody normally put on behind them when you're doing Zoom meetings, right? Just tell us a little bit about the history of UCOOK, and once again, an idea of your just your client. Who is your core client? Sorry, I just want to move this.
Cool. Yeah, so UCOOK, you find it.
Yeah, I'm fine.
UCOOK started around 6 years ago. And I guess really started as a, you know, I guess a food brand in the meal kit space specifically. I think at the time we were like, you know, globally, the meal kit space was an exciting one. I think that's also kind of where we started. And yeah, I think, you know, I guess our heritage is like really around food. And we have been purely focused on meal kits up until I'd say around about 2 years ago. And as you can imagine, like, you know, meal kit being fresh produce category is from a fulfillment perspective not always the easiest. Yeah. And then I think up until 2 years ago, we decided to make life even more difficult as we start introducing new categories. And one of them is our latest launch of the craft meals category. That's essentially, you know, frozen meals. We've launched recently wine pairings, and we've also launched a baby product. So we're actually making life even more difficult for us. But I think, you know, speaking to your initial point around, you know, what does the customer want? And I think we kind of realizing that we actually want to, like, you know, want to just offer more things to the customer to actually ultimately make, I guess, life more convenient. And I think I'm excited about today's session, you know, when it comes to sort of fulfillment and customer experience. I think my initial sort of comment would be to say, for me, customer experience is not just about what you actually deliver to the customer. It actually starts with the very beginning, the first interaction. Like, you know, when a customer actually sees an advertisement of a brand, of a business, that's actually where customer experience starts, right? All the way to obviously receiving a parcel, and then actually, you know, if something goes wrong, what is the aftercare? And I think that for me is the whole value chain of customer experience. And I think it's a very interesting one. And obviously for us as a food brand, it can be quite tricky. But I think, yeah, it has been, you know, it's going well for us. And yeah, I'm excited about today's conversation.
It's interesting. And you guys obviously had to put up, and I'm not going to mention the retailer, but there was one retailer that decided to give you a really hard time, but it looks like you've still come up trumps. So we won't talk about them right now. But it's interesting to see how the big corporates tend to follow, and how you obviously need to pivot or become hyper-focused and deliver even a better service, more compelling offering than they are able to. I mean, it is something I'd like to chat to you about at some stage. But once again, just intros. You've heard Philip Marais, head of Africa and the Brazil supply chain for Cotton On. Peter Allerstorfer was the UCOOK, of course. And moving on to Christo Semmelink, who is the integrations manager at Vectra. So, Christo, let's have a little bit. And if everybody can, I don't mind people putting their cameras on. I don't know, Sharon. It just feels like I'm chatting, looking at a blank screen sometimes. So if it's fine, if everybody can put their cameras on, I can also see people's reactions, etc. It just makes the conversation a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Say again, Sharon?
If everyone can put their camera on who's participating in this, that would be great.
Oh, that's great. And I take it because Christo Semmelink is there, right?
Yeah, that's me.
There we go, Christo. I was wondering. You were very quiet in the background there, so I was wondering if you were with us. But integrations manager at Vectra. Once again, same story. Tell us a bit about the business and the customer.
Right. Thank you very much. Right. So my name is Christo. I work for a company called Vectra. So we are represented all over across South Africa. We do business in South Africa, all over and up in Africa as well. We are essentially a development house. We specialize in building e-commerce sites and retail solutions, and really a lot that's involved with that. So including, in part of the fulfillment process, the integration between larger ERP systems, other 3PL systems, warehouse management systems, couriers, and retail systems. And so our customers are really anyone that would like to build an e-commerce site, large or small. So from the larger sites, we do have that experience to kind of get that synchronization with your other tools in your software architecture, such as your ERP system. So got extensive experience in working in systems like SAP and Oracle and Sage, for that matter. And so we specialize in that, and building those sites specifically, and looking at the integration really to the various different systems that the e-commerce sites talks to.
Absolutely, and there's a different level of customer satisfaction. Of course, understanding customers' needs at that level, very imperative in their advice, because you're not just an integrations company, you also advise, obviously, an advisory service, I would imagine too.
Yeah, so we have so much experience really, and we've come a long way, and we've built so many different various systems, worked with different clients, so we really understand the industry well. And now more than ever, where businesses need these sites, and where the fulfillment experience needs to be efficient. Your customers have those certain expectations, and you really want to meet them. So we really look at, how can we provide like the seamless experience for a customer, giving them the visibility within your supply chain. How does your systems work? So really for the customer, they only see one system, but in the background, there's all these plenty different systems talking to each other, communicating, and you have these different departments, and they also need to understand, from a customer's perspective, what is the order, what is the current status of that order, where is it at, and when ultimately will it be in those customers' hands. And that's really where we come in to make sure that your systems tie in together to give you that information.
Okay, great, guys. So there's a wonderful introduction to your businesses, who your customers are, and I just want to shoot straight into the first thing, right? And maybe if I can come back to you, Philip Marais, with Cotton On. We all talk about being customer first, right? And it's important to be customer first, and customer first drives our actions. But prior to that, we obviously need to get to know our customers. And you do get businesses who get to know their customers in the boardroom, and then you get those who get to know their customers on the ground. What type of business is Cotton On? So when it comes to your customer discovery and understanding their needs, what drives you?
So I think when you were questioning or planting a seed earlier, it made me think a bit more about it. And I think the DNA of our company is a young and entrepreneurial type of company. I think we're too small to get away with being called a startup, but or too big to get away with it. But our own customers. So if I walk into a store, how I leave and how I'm treated and how I feel is how I'd expect someone else to. And I think that's really good, just truthful feedback that anyone, so if it be my friend or one of my colleagues, because we wholly own, we're all in our stores often. And if someone or someone's friend goes into a store and has a good or bad experience, we take that feedback right back on board. And it is a dipstick into how the service offering has been, or whether that be through one of our partners in a wholesale channel or on our e-com channel or through our stores, that feeling of how you've been served, whether it's product availability, what the person has spoken to you about, if you felt safe and sanitized at the door, whatever the case may be, all of those things are feeding directly into it, and we take our actions from that. So I think we really like to feel like we're really close to our customer. So we won't go and do a whole lot of market research and find out who our customer is and laser like onto them. We're a much more word of mouth business. So we love doing good things for people so that that word spreads organically. And we can only do that if our product is good, if we're giving good service, all of those things stack up. And that way, we're sort of in discovery mode. We love the fact that our brands do speak to each other. So I may dress my kids, luckily enough, at Cotton On Kids. My eldest will soon move into factory, then they'll probably feel like they can go to Cotton On. You know, so we like, if we hook them at Cotton On Kids, chances are they'll have an affinity to our brand, and not just to the brand, but to what they can get and the experience they can get by shopping at a Cotton On brand store.
And customer fulfillment, I think you hit the nail on the head. Well, I don't know the industry that well, but I'm just thinking generally it's, and I think you said this earlier, it's how people feel. You know, there were some retail, people ask the question, why do some clothing retailers close and have to sell off their businesses? And why do others survive? Now, clothing and product is one component, but we're all limbic people, right? We all think emotionally first. So it really starts surely when I walk in that door, how I get greeted, the knowledge of the actual product itself, which counts. I mean, it's something I spoke to the founder of Brights not too long ago, Orlando, Brights Electrical and Hardware. And he said what differentiates them from, let's say, the competition is that the people intimately know their products, but they're also very customer centric and they know they're dealing with human beings when they walk in the door.
And as you say, with the customers, there's a vast array of merchandise that you can get in our store. You know, so have the trust in the product is one thing, because we might not feel like someone following you around the store is something that our customer wants. It probably isn't. But you know, ask a question, you'll get an answer. You'll get an answer from someone who's probably the same age and stage as you are. You know, that is our customer. Our team in our stores are relatively young. And you know, they won't roll their eyes at me when I go and ask for joggers, knowing that, you know, that probably look better on a 20-something-year-old. They know that that's what I'm after, and will help me get to that point if that's what I'm after. Online has also brought us a difference. We've been only online for 3 years, I think now. And that brought us a different aspect of that customer facing variant, right? So how does the customer navigate through our e-com store? I'm a little bit biased because the e-com channel gets fulfilled through my facilities, but you know, feedback that I get from my colleagues at head office or a friend on how easy it was to navigate. Now, that's not in my direct control, but I'm certainly taking that feedback and doing something with it. I'm also loving the fact that I can get real-time feedback on my fulfillment, on my lead time, all those cool things. So if I'm trying something, I'll mention something into the ear of one of the big shoppers at head office, and they're bound to place an order this week, and I'll say, hey, you know, did you feel like it was different? Or how did our partner who delivered the stock treat you when you got to their door, because they're the face of my execution? Has all been a really cool part of the last year that we've been able to discover.
Absolutely. And let's move on to UCOOK. From a UCOOK perspective, once again, getting to know your customer. Competition gets tight. Your competition, you know, if we look at the competitive environment that you're in, you've got, if you look at the Porter's Five Forces, you know, new entrants to the market is one issue, but alternatives. I mentioned, you know, the retailers, for example, and it is a real challenge from a UCOOK perspective, I would imagine. So staying relevant means you need to be so hyper-focused on your client and their needs and deliver the best than anybody else when it comes to fulfilling those needs. So tell us a little bit about the customer discovery and getting to understand the nuances that differentiates you.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question. I guess UCOOK obviously is you know, we predominantly, I guess, operate in a digital space. And I think as such, you know, the beauty of that is we've got a lot of data at our hands. You know, we know a lot about our customers, like where they live, who they are. And like, I think that's obviously, you know, helps us to form a picture of who that customer is. But I think, you know, I guess one mustn't just, you know, look at data. I think it's quite important to actually, you know, also have some real world interaction with customers. So as such, you know, when we actually developed our frozen range, we did focus groups. We actually invited some of our, you know, sort of loyal customers to actually be part of the journey of us developing these products. Because ultimately, like, we don't want to develop a product that, you know, we think is great, but our customers think different. So I think it's important to, you know, include the customer in the journey, specifically when it comes to, like, you know, trying to develop new things. And I think, you know, we have the ability to do that. So we obviously must, I guess, capitalize on that. I think Another important part is, I think you mentioned it earlier, is around actually using the product yourself in the organization. I think, I don't know exact numbers, but from what I've seen in the past, more than half of our staff uses our product on a weekly basis, including myself. So I cook every week. And I think that's also like, it also speaks to like, really understanding their product. And I think that in combination with, knowing the customer in terms of the data, speaking to them in person as well, when it comes to like, sort of new developments, and ultimately also knowing the product, I think is vital to the journey.
Indeed. And Vectra, you guys do the integrations, you do the sort of heavy tech lifting stuff, making sure that things work seamlessly, but the customer is still king, and I would imagine plays a very important role in the way you go about doing those integrations. So let's talk about the customer discovery from your perspective.
Okay, sure. Yeah. We are all e-commerce customers, shop online regularly. So we also understand it from that perspective, what is kind of expected from a website. And, we do these things called like A/B testing, during the development. That's more now on the front end side, kind of just to check, okay, what is this customer's experience in going through the website and actually closing that deal. But, if I was talking about the fulfillment part of it, maybe specifically now, it's that, I think a lot of companies might think that, okay, now I've got this sale now, and it's great, but there's like a very big mystery, behind like how that order now gets fulfilled. And I don't think a lot of people are like fully aware on how these operations work, and not even the customer, not a clue either. So, I mean, personally, like a real bad experience for me is to, place an order and then kind of wait a few days and then suddenly just get a phone call that somebody's here at my, at my gate, and I'm at work, there's nobody there, and so that it doesn't create like a nice checkout experience for me, or doesn't it complete, no matter how great the product is, it doesn't really complete that whole cycle of the order. So for us, we want to create that visibility for the customer, in different stages, really make them involved in that process of fulfillment. So, and you can do that in various different ways. In a lot of the systems, more of our larger companies have been fortunate, so we've been able to like automate a lot of fulfillment processes, and by being able to do that, and we can have like a central view of where the order is in each status, and define these milestones as the order progresses through the fulfillment timeline. Like, it's now at a state where it's been packed by someone, and it's at a state where it's actually ready for collection if you've chose like a collection store. And just having that visibility and notifying the customer, sending them that email, sending them that SMSs, saying that, we've actually dispatched this person, this is his name, this is even his contact details, right? And, we're expecting him to arrive during this.
Okay, we seem to have I think you're freezing up a little bit there.
It's really like part of that experience, and, okay.
No, that's fine. Sorry, you broke up there, you froze a little bit, so I'll get you to finish your sentence. Yeah.
Sure. So it's really about that, making the customer feel involved up to the point that he actually receives his goods, which is technically really the end of that process, where he signs it off, not really at the checkout stage, but, at the point where he's actually received his goods now. And, because at that point, you can still give good comment back on saying how his experience was. And that part of it shouldn't be overlooked. And so we do that by kind of using integration and automation strategies within the business.
So if you've just logged on, you're listening to us, we all know this is the Fulfilment Summit. And at the moment, we are talking about the customer journey, the experience with the brand, fulfilling that particular process, which is really keen. I am Kieno Kammies. My guests today on this panel, we've got Philip Marais, Head of Africa and Brazil Supply Chains at Cotton On. They don't really need much of an introduction. I think a lot of us know their clothing. Philip Marais is someone who's been talking about how important it is for them to understand on the ground what the customer wants, and that is how they respond. It's a key part of the fulfillment process for them. We also have just heard Christo Semmelink, who is the integrations manager at Vectra. Now, they might be doing the tech stuff, but that is integral to the customer experience, as you've heard as well. We'll maybe move on to talking about some of the lessons learned when it comes to fulfillment, maybe in light of what's happened with COVID-19 as well. And of course, Peter is with UCOOK, Peter Allerstorfer, who, I mean, they're definitely a startup. They're doing some amazing stuff right in your kitchen. And if you haven't checked out UCOOK, you should check it out. I say that because I've used your products and I think they're phenomenal. So it's easy for me to give that one a bit of a punt at the moment. But let's talk COVID-19, people. March last year, no, maybe February last year, things were still hunky-dory. We thought we were on top of things. And then lockdown happened. Then COVID-19 happened. And I'm going to open this to the floor now. I don't want to sound like a robot going from one person to the other. So feel free to be anarchic and just pop in whenever you want to. So let's talk about some of the lessons that you've learned post COVID-19, lockdown, customer needs changing. Who'd like to take me up on that one? I'll choose one of you very quickly.
One of us. I guess one thing that sprang to mind, and I see Hilton's talking later, was so our last mile provider, who is Dawnring by coincidence. It's not that him and I are speaking together today, but that Dawnring driver who arrived at Kieno's gates and had a mask, and all of a sudden said, "Hey, do you want me to leave the parcel at your door and not speak to you, or can I take a photo of you receiving my parcel?" Absolutely threw us for a bit of a spin. I mean, we had people complaining, for instance, that a driver was taking a picture of their underage daughter, for instance, right? Where the driver just wanted to get a POD and not touch the customer. So the intent was obviously correct. But how that driver then interacts with our customer was a key part of how we were able to fulfill and keep our customers coming back for that next shop. The previous speaker spoke about that repeat shopper, and there's no ways I could expect or think that the customer would shop again online for us unless they had a good experience with us. I'd lose that customer if I messed it up. So I think that was one of the keys, is how we engaged our partners, who were, either from the back end perspective, whether it's how we merged our online store, whether it's our last mile provider, and it's how the box was packed. So there were so many touch points that we had to sort of re-engage with how important those were for our customer's journey, to make sure that customer had a bit of a surprise and delight moment when they opened their box at store or at their house, or collecting in store. And that was a really cool learning for us. The other one, I guess, was just how we flexed the different modes of delivery. So, where bricks operations would have been 97% of our turnover, it swung massively in how we were able internally, as the previous speaker spoke about, just internally, the customer doesn't know what has to happen in the guts, and to be honest, I don't think they actually care. They just want to see their product arriving by them quickly. How we were able to flex that was a really cool takeaway for us. So cross-skilling within our facility was a really great outcome of that. That team members got additional skills. We were able to use those skills and practice those skills, and enabled us to flex really nicely.
Thank you very much for that, and welcome to those who've just, I was going to say tuned in, but I'm out of radio. I mean, you've kind of logged in, right? So that's the best thing to do. Now we mute mics and switch off videos, and I mean, it's a whole new world, and I'm finding it fascinating. I'm Kieno Kammies, and I'm the moderator of this particular panel. You've just heard Philip Marais, their head of Africa and Brazil supply chains for Cotton On, talking about COVID-19, the lessons learned, customer behavior changes, if any. UCOOK, I would imagine things must have gone swimmingly. I would, people stuck at home, not being able to get out. So let's talk about COVID-19 and the UCOOK story.
Yeah, thanks. Look, it has been definitely an interesting, I guess, sort of year and a half, 2 years now. I think I think as UCOOK, obviously, especially in the beginning, like things were a little bit uncertain, and I think I I guess we as UCOOK, I think we felt like, I think we have been able to actually, during this, especially the first sort of wave where there's a lot of uncertainty, I think we've been to a lot of customers, I think been quite helpful to actually put them at ease. I think like a lot of people were scared to go into shops. And I think, obviously the solution we offered, I think, put people at ease. Having said that, obviously we had to do almost like overnight a lot of work to address concerns from customers, like how do I make sure that when you deliver my parcel to my door that there's no COVID on the box, right? There was research like COVID would spread on boxes as well, like so how do you ensure that? So like we had to use a lot of new processes and structures to actually, I guess, deliver a safe product to our customers. And I think that was a big effort from our side, together with all our external stakeholders, I guess internal as well as external. And when I say external, like, all the suppliers we work with, or, pick up our courier provider and other courier providers we work with, I think, we've done a lot of work together to actually, I guess, put the safety of our customers first. And I think, I think we've learned a lot throughout the process. So I think it certainly has been an interesting phase. And I think obviously, macroeconomic, it has been terrible. Like, I think that's, stating the obvious. And we felt, a lot of restaurants had to close down. And we also felt during this period that we have, I guess, almost a responsibility, being on the fortunate side of COVID, actually, almost like seeing an uptake on numbers. We felt like we need to, it's the time to give back for us. So we've done a lot of partnerships with restaurants and I guess businesses that are less fortunate to try to really, keep them afloat and keep them or help them to get through this difficult period. And I think that was also a big learning curve for us to actually, when things go well, I think it's also important to actually give back and actually help the, I guess, sort of other people or I guess, partners that you usually work with to try to help them through a difficult time. And I think we've done a lot of work in that space. And I think last point on that topic is, obviously COVID sort of happened overnight. And we obviously, as I mentioned in the beginning, we saw an uptake on numbers, which I think for us was fortunate, but we actually had to stop taking on customers. We actually had to limit. So like we literally, we probably could have like, expanded by doubled our business. We actually couldn't. And I think that was also a learning for us, like, how do you scale a business that quick? And I think even though we are online and you would assume, you can actually, infinitely scale a business like ours, the reality is, you have a lot of things go into actually into this process and structures to actually make it happen. I think we've learned from that. And I think we have now an organization that is a lot more flexible and a lot more scalable throughout the process.
Indeed. We talk about the pivots that we have to go through because of lockdown, etc. But they eventually, and in your case, or any of your cases for that matter, could become an integral part of the business model moving forward. Because even if we go back to, a semblance of what it used to be pre-1990, pre-1994, listen to me now, pre-2020 March, right? I think there's certain things that we can take home that helps benefit the business. The relationships that we build with those restaurants, for example, could be something key on the road forward, would you say?
Absolutely. And look, I mean, I think we are, we obviously are, I guess, a food business that caters for the dinner occasion. So one will argue, well, the restaurants are your competitors. But we actually think about it very different. Like in the restaurants they are friends. We see this is like it's a collaboration. It's working together. And I think it's certainly like, we've done a lot of interesting, campaigns with restaurants that actually, again, puts us closer together and actually, sort of creates more attention and actually excitement in the industry. And I think, and that's certainly something we'll keep on doing. We've done like sort of cook-alongs to actually support certain chefs to get through this period. And I think that's been received well, and certainly will be something we'll take into the future as well.
Great. Just one, that's Peter Allerstorfer from UCOOK. And Christo, Semmelink, just thinking about that, people couldn't spell digital, some of them, before March last year. And all of a sudden, people going, hold on, my fulfillment process now has to include digital, and those already doing digital would have to get better at it. So let's talk about your lessons post-COVID. From an integrations and technical perspective.
Yeah, okay, sure. I can say maybe, before COVID, we already had, some of these customers that understand, a lot of their client base didn't really want to go out to a brick and mortar store, or, they really wanted to have that e-commerce experience, and they really advanced and matured in their e-commerce and digital ordering offering. And so they were very much ready when COVID hit, and their businesses boomed a lot. And a lot of but also, again, the two things happened, right? Some businesses realized that, yes, okay, I really need a digital ordering solution. I have to be there. But also, there's a lot of risk about me spending all that or going through that process to build my new site now so quickly that people were very hesitant to kind of start and throw more investment into making sure my digital solution is out there. And, we were pushing for it. And it seems almost obvious, but, you can put yourself in the shoes of, some of our clients, and, it's a big investment to make, initially when you want to move over to the digital ordering space. And I think more now, a bit later on, people realize that, the benefits they can reach from it and why it's so important. And those that have gone through that journey last year, or starting to mature into that offering, and they're starting to reaping the benefits of building these sites. So I think it's the confidence of coming back into our clients' mind to say that, we definitely need to invest in our digital offering solution, and, getting our processes so that it's like efficient and productive. And what we've also seen during the fulfillment steps in this is like a lot of the processes there needed to start being automated. So a lot of people, a lot of business were still working with paper-based systems like picking slips and digital way bills and delivery notes, and like all paper-based documents. And the drive for them a lot was to try to get this all digital, only working with soft copies. So that takes a lot of integration work there, and it's really for them to make the fulfillment process more efficient. So we're doing things like automating data capturing through certain, they call it robotic process automation. It's where you can actually do some of these data capturing automatically. And with that, and with proper integration, you can take a lot away of any kind of paper-based system. And with that, they've seen also a lot of improvement in productivity. And then there's also less closer contact with people working in that environment. So creating like a more safer work environment than working with COVID. Needing less interaction with other people, being able to work more digitally.
Yeah. Now, just from the digital point of view, and I'm not going to mention Mr. D, and I'm not going to mention Uber Eats, right? So I won't mention those companies. But the one thing that I took home from this is that they didn't do much. They didn't change much. They were still charging the restaurant X amount in order to take that order out, right? Because they say they're offering marketing, etc. Have you seen an uptake in people in, especially the food delivery space, wanting to do their own thing, wanting to make sure? Because I mean, when your balance sheet, there's nothing to talk about, because after the heavy lockdown, you've taken, if you were lucky enough and you had some cash in that balance sheet, it's been depleted. You needed to keep people employed. And then you've got partners who keep charging you a lot of money for things that just doesn't make sense, especially when everybody's struggling for capital. Have you seen people wanting to do their own stuff or groupings of restaurants in areas saying, listen, we want to create our own delivery system that is a lot fairer on us? I mean, have you seen that sort of thing happen? Yeah, so to be honest, like within Vectra, we don't have a lot of clients that specifically do food delivery. We're a lot in like general retail, clothing, building materials, especially, and but we are in the space, and we do talk about it a lot. And yes, we definitely see people's
really wanting to kind of narrow down the cost that it takes them to complete their fulfillment. And, I can, especially restaurants working with a very thin margin, to now go take that, percentage, like a 30% from Uber or something, to hand that over to their customers, and the restaurants need to bring that money over to their customers again. It is something that they are like moving against, and I think that there is like this drive maybe a bit back again of like certain companies and restaurants trying to do their own food delivery. We've definitely seen that.
That's interesting. Now, we've spoken about the technology, we've spoken about the lessons that we've learned, and and technology is important. Technology is only as important, of course, as the business model that supports it and the value that the brand obviously offers. But an integral part of the fulfillment process is how we respond, to your point earlier, Philip Marais, responding to the changes that happen. So how do you galvanize your staff, and how do you make yourself nimble enough to respond to an increasingly ever-changing world that we sit in when it comes to those customer needs? Just a little bit of an insight to that, because mobilizing your team to react is important.
It is. And after 26th of March last year, I somehow got hold of a contact at the Department of Trade when they sent out that, which almost seemed nonsensical, list about what garments could be sold. I don't know if anyone remembers, with a smirk on their face, because it was so weird. I subsequently actually found out how that list made news. But it is, from that point, and we realized we could lever what people were almost getting desperate for. A tracksuit, pair of tracksuit bottoms for their kids, and with us going into winter that time of year, was a really interesting part of that process. So it was literally phoning up team members going, are you in Gauteng? Let's start there, or had you traveled home to your family? Because that made it a lot harder. Getting up those certificates and full individually writing up those certificates that allowed you to travel across provincial borders. Having another partner who was able, luckily, to help us with some team members if there were shortfalls, because obviously the e-com fulfillment process is a lot more onerous on our productivity than a bricks fulfillment model. Was a really fun part for people to feel like they were part and parcel of a solve that we were solving for both ourselves and our own company, as well as for customers who were coming back and wanting to shop. Which, in that uncertainty in March and April, no one knew what was coming. Peter mentioned earlier about cardboard boxes. I remember receiving a electronics part from China, and they had like instructions on how to not get COVID from this plastic bag. So all of those unknowns really did throw us for a loop. But we hustle in South Africa. We find a way. It's part of our DNA, and I think it goes a long way in what you said earlier about who survives and who doesn't. Is how hard is it in your heart to hustle and find a way. Yes, there are roadblocks. How are you going to push through them? What are you going to do? Has all been a really nice outcome, and our team have come through that relatively well. It's been tough because we went through peak season, which is massive for us. Then sort of Feb to August is find your feet, get your leave in, do all that, and we were full on. Then we went into another peak. So it was really hard on our team. It was hard on the guys managing teams. But we live to fight another day because we're resilient and because we fight through all those roadblocks. But having the team galvanize around us to solve for our customer was an amazing outcome for Phil and for Continental South Africa.
Absolutely. And there's obviously the thing about looking after your team, making sure they're happy, they're the customer-facing people. The same with your suppliers, the people who have to deliver the boxes. If you don't keep them all happy, that brand that you put out there, you say, hey, this is who we are. It's a bit like the people who sell burgers. You look at this big, juicy burger. It looks like it's two burgers stuck on top of one another. And it just looks wonderful. You walk in, and you get a thin little patty. That's what we don't want to happen, right?
And the market is tough. The labor market in South Africa is tough. Like no one argues that. So we've got to be cognizant of that. We can't ignore that. And how we keep team members both in store and in the DCs and around the country engaged is a huge part of Cottonon's mantra. And we never get it perfect, but we also don't claim to be getting it perfect. We know that we're a work in progress. We know that we're going to try different things every quarter. And I think that's a really important part of our DNA, is actually really wanting to do more for everyone, whether that be our customer, our team members, our brand, our principals in Australia. It's just that need to be ever better is a really cool part of our DNA.
I love it. Love what you're saying. Moving on to UCOOK and the people. You did touch on that earlier, but galvanizing your people to respond. Because as I said earlier, those people are essential when it comes to fulfilling to the customer. Tell us about your team.
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. So I think obviously, as I mentioned earlier, like we had to adapt a lot, over the last sort of, I guess, year and a half. And I think it certainly has been an interesting journey for us. I think at the end, the way, I guess, how I think about sort of me as a closing remark is around, I mean, as an online business, I think we've been in a fortunate position. But I think, at the end, when we speak to, I guess, customer experience and, what we do to actually make our customers truly happy, I think it's really about, going the extra mile. I think it's important that as an organization, you are, nimble enough to adapt to, I guess, sort of external factors. I think, things will go wrong. Things will go wrong. It's always like that, and I think it's important to think about how you react to these I guess issues that are being caused along the way for the customers. And I think how you react to that is crucial. So ultimately, at the end, don't lose the customer along the journey. And I think, I guess, sort of last point from my side is, I think a business can do a lot in terms of marketing and creating a brand and attracting customers, and I think that is great, right? And I think what's almost as important as that is, how you make that customer feel along the journey. And I think ultimately the customer experience plays long-term, I believe, a crucial role in the long-term profitability of a business. Because ultimately, if the customer has a great experience, they will come back again and again. And I think that is almost as valuable as, attracting customer in the first place. And I think as a result, will have significant impact on the long-term sustainability of your business. So I think customer journey for me is vital.
Indeed, thank you very much for that. And moving on to Vectra, so I happened, as I said earlier, to be in the tech space as well, and I actually found out that the techies are people too. They don't just sit behind computers and become one with the motherboard and all the rest of it, right? And the other thing about devs is they sought after. Everybody wants them. Our salary bills are sky high because they are production. That's what they do. So from a people perspective at Vectra, let's talk about the people you've got to manage, the people who've got to respond to your customers' needs when we talk about digital commerce, the science of digital commerce, and delivering on it.
Okay, yeah. So I think when COVID hit, we all started working from home, like most of the other workforces. I think the software industry really is in a good position and a fortunate position to be able to do that quite efficiently. We have these tools, that are project management tools and communication tools that we've been using even before COVID, that really assist us and help us to be able to work from home. I think it wasn't really uncommon to hire people remotely even before COVID. And I'm at the office, but looking behind me, there's actually just one other person here in our 400 square office. And what we've seen is that I thought people would be coming back to office as soon as they possibly could, but we've seen that people they work very productively from home, from anywhere, as long as you have good development processes. Coming back to the fulfillment and how these people work. Yes. So from our development, for our developers, they like I said, we're all e-commerce customers. We shop online regularly, so our people needs to, our employees understand our customers very well. They, engage, with our clients regularly. So because we can't go out and go see our clients always, and some of them are remote, some of them are in Africa, we have to build these close relationships. I can give you an example. Last year, we actually did a rollout of an e-commerce site and 200 retail stores in Malawi. We did it all remotely. We went once in Malawi, so we managed to do like the whole rollout there, and it really showed us that this is possible. If you can have that close ties with customers and clients and work with them in that way, and it was a major success. And I think the whole implementation cost of that went down significantly because of that, because we don't have to go and fly up and down Africa. Every now and again, and so I think, we've proved to ourselves as a company what we can achieve, just by working with like good processes.
Indeed. Well, we are at 10:30 at the moment. I don't want to get into trouble with Sharon, so I'm going to ask everybody, if you can, just if anybody takes anything away today, what would you like them to take home with them? So we start with UCOOK, Vectra, and then Cotton On.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short. So I think from me, the key takeaways, and obviously this is, I guess, fulfillment and customer experience. It speaks to all of these kind of things. And I think it's a vital part, as I said earlier, I think a vital part of your business to pay attention to. And ultimately, I think will make the difference of, surviving or not surviving. I think Philip mentioned earlier, like, certain stores that just closed down. And I think ultimately it comes down to, if you provide a good customer experience to your customers, they will come back. And you don't actually necessarily have to market them to come back. They actually will come back by themselves because they actually had a great experience, they enjoy it, and they will just come back and again and again and again. And that ultimately will make a difference, I believe, long-term for a business to survive or not to survive.
It's Allerstorfer from UCOOK. Thank you very much for your time. So I know you're busy. Normally, successful entrepreneurs don't have time to have half-an-hour conversations, but it's good to see that you've made some time for us. And then, as I said, it's a pleasure. Christo, Semmelink, Vectra.
So from our side, I think we just wanted to mention, and I think customers need to have that continuous improvement mindset in place. We want to say that we can assist customers in defining those metrics needed for them and helping them to going through that continuous improvement processes, making sure, looking at their tools and making sure their tools and architecture is properly integrated to be able to give their customers in return the best possible experience, in working with their brand and with their site.
Listen, by the way, I dig your background. I need to find out where you actually got that from. I'm gonna have to steal it somehow. And then
it's our office.
That's really
I agree.
Cool. I
love it.
Philip Marais from UCOOK, final words.
Not as cool as your empty whiteboard, right? I think my takeaway from or my message today is keep close to your partners, right? So your partners might be who supplies you cardboard boxes, like you said earlier, or your last mile delivery solution, or your internal partners, so my team members in here, and the engagement of all of those along your journey, just to support all the hard work and the DNA inside you, I think is critical to you getting that customer back next time. To think you're an island, I think, is a bit of a naive way to look at what we do and how we're hoping to imprint on the people around us.
Wonderful, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time. And by the way, keep stocking those cargos. I'm going to be buying more of them. They're very comfortable.
Lots of colors.
Exactly. Gents, thank you very much for your time. Very insightful. I think we've taken an hour to get through everything. But of course, time is tight. And I want to thank you once again for taking time off your busy schedules and joining us today. And to you who've taken time to tune into this, to listen to this, thank you very much. Sharon, over to you.